I was barely in the door when I saw her arms crossed, phone in hand, staring at me like I didn't belong. I'd just arrived at my lake house for the weekend, ready to unwind, when she marched up from the neighbor's dock and asked, "Can I help you?" I told her no, politely, and went inside. A few minutes later, I looked out the window and saw her still standing there. That's when I heard the words I'll never forget. "I'm calling 911. There's a suspicious person at the lake house." I couldn't believe it. I've owned this place for years. The deed is in my name. My pictures are on the wall. My family's memories are built into every corner of that house. But to her, I didn't look like someone who belonged in a lake house like this. That's when I knew exactly what kind of situation I was dealing with. 15 minutes later, a sheriff's car pulled up. The tension in the air could have cracked glass. I stepped out to meet the officer, expecting questions, maybe even worse. But what happened next? Not even Karen saw it coming. The officer took one look at me and then stood at attention. Right there on the gravel driveway, he gave me a crisp salute. Karen's jaw hit the ground, but that was only the beginning. What the officer said next changed everything and exposed way more than just one person's bad assumptions. The officer stepped forward, calm but sharp, and said, "Good to see you again, sir." I nodded, still trying to keep my cool, even though Karen looked like she was about to explode. She rushed toward him, pointing at me like I was trespassing on someone else's land. "He's not supposed to be here. This house belongs to a family that's always kept it up nice," she shouted. The cop turned to her slowly and asked, "Ma'am, do you know who you just called about?" She paused, clearly caught off guard. "No, but I know the owner, and it's not him." The officer didn't argue, simply pulled out his notepad, asked for her name, and then looked at me again. "Want to press charges for trespassing or harassment?" he asked, loud enough for her to hear. That's when Karen started backpedaling. "I'm just trying to keep the neighborhood safe," she muttered, arms folded again, but not nearly as confident this time. I didn't say much. I wanted to, trust me, but I've learned that sometimes silence says more. What Karen didn't know was that I'm a veteran and, this officer, he'd served with me years ago. Same unit. That salute wasn't just for respect. It was recognition. Still, something felt off. She wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She knew something, or thought she did. And when I saw her make a call as she walked away, I realized this might go deeper than a mistaken identity or a bad attitude. I watched Karen walk back across the property line, still on the phone, glancing over her shoulder like she couldn't believe the officer hadn't dragged me off in cuffs. That should have been the end of it. But something in her tone during that call, calm, quiet, almost rehearsed, told me this wasn't just a knee-jerk reaction. There was something else going on. The next morning, I woke up to find a note taped to my front gate. No signature, just typed words. Asterisk, "We don't want trouble here. Maybe this isn't the right place for you." I stared at it for a while, trying to figure out what kind of we she was talking about. I've been coming to this lake house for years. My name's on the mailbox, the tax records, the community list. But I'd kept to myself mostly. Never really got involved with the neighborhood circles or HOA drama. Maybe that was the mistake. Later that day, I ran into Mr. Ellis, one of the few longtime owners around the lake. He leaned in and said, "You. No, you're not the first person Karen's made uncomfortable around here." When I asked what he meant, he just sighed and said, "Some folks think they get to decide who belongs." That's when I realized this wasn't about me personally. It was about control, gatekeeping, maybe even pushing certain people out. And as much as I wanted to let it go, that note changed everything. I had to find out what was really going on. I started asking quiet questions, nothing dramatic. Just casual conversations with a few neighbors I'd seen around over the years. Most were polite but hesitant, like they didn't want to get involved. A couple even looked around before talking, lowering their voices. One guy, Paul, told me straight up, "Karen's on the HOA board now. She's been trying to change things: who rents here, who buys, even who gets invited to the summer gatherings." That hit me. This wasn't just about a misunderstanding or a bad assumption. This was targeted. The note on my gate wasn't just rooted, was a warning. And once I started asking questions, things started happening fast. My mailbox was left open one morning, papers scattered. The trash bins were overturned the next day. Minor stuff, but it sent a message. I kept a log, took pictures, didn't say a word to anyone. I knew better than to escalate before I had facts. Then the real twist came. A neighbor I barely knew, Melinda, slipped me a manila envelope while walking her dog. "You didn't hear it from me," she whispered. Inside were photocopies of internal HOA emails, meeting notes, screenshots, and right there in bold text was my name, listed next to phrases like "not a good fit" and "possible enforcement action." Enforcement for what? It was all planned, coordinated. They didn't want me there. Not because I broke rules, but because I didn't fit their image of the perfect Lakehouse community. And now it was clear. I wasn't just dealing with Karen. I was dealing with a whole network. That envelope changed everything. I spent hours going through the pages, highlighting names, timelines, even HOA vote records. The language was subtle, but the intent was clear. Certain homeowners were being flagged based on who they were, not what they'd done. And I wasn't the only one. There were at least 3 other names circled, all newer residents, none of whom had shown up at the last few HOA events. I decided to reach out to one of them, a woman named Renee, who lived at the far end of the lake. When I finally caught her home, she didn't even seem surprised. "Let me guess," she said. "Karen got to you too." Turns out Renee had been dealing with constant HOA inspections, random violation notices, even a fine for leaving her canoe too close to the waterline. "I paid it," she said, "just to avoid the fight. But it never ends." Then she showed me something that raised the stakes even higher. It was a photo, an old one. A group shot of some of the original Lakehouse owners from over 20 years ago, and right there in the back corner, nearly cut off by the frame, was Karen, standing beside a man wearing the same badge the responding officer had the day she called 911 on me. I took a closer look and felt a chill run through me. That wasn't just any officer. That was the sheriff. And if she had ties that deep, then this wasn't just HOA politics. It was something bigger. That photo was the missing piece. I sent a copy to my lawyer, who started digging into public records. Turns out, Karen wasn't just a board member. She was related to the former HOA president and had deep ties to several longtime residents who'd been quietly reshaping community rules for years. Even worse, her connection to the sheriff wasn't just old friendship. They were cousins, which explained a lot. The tone of her 911 call, the confidence, even the way she walked off after the officer saluted me. But here's where it broke wide open. My lawyer filed a formal complaint with the county and handed over all the documents, including the HOA emails. Within days, a county investigator showed up at the lake. This time, Karen didn't look so confident, especially when the officer who originally responded to her 911 call arrived again, lonely this time. He was there to serve her a notice of inquiry. Apparently, he'd been unaware of the internal HOA drama and wasn't happy about being dragged into it. The board held an emergency meeting. Several members resigned, and the HOA was placed under a third-party audit. They had to walk back several enforcement actions, including mine and Renee's. Just when I thought it was finally over, I received an anonymous envelope in the mail. Inside was a single photo, an overhead shot of my lake house from a drone, taken 2 weeks before Karen ever called the cops, and written on the back. You still don't know the whole story. I stared at that drone photo for a long time. It wasn't just creepy, it confirmed what I'd started to suspect. Karen's 911 call wasn't just based on some random moment of paranoia. Someone had been watching me, tracking when I came and went from my own lake house. Whether it was Karen or someone else in her circle, they'd been keeping tabs for a while, waiting for the right moment to push me out. I handed the photo over to the investigator, who added it to the open inquiry. As of now, no one's claimed responsibility, and no more strange letters or warnings have shown up. Renee and the others have started speaking up too, and for the first time in a long while, the neighborhood feels a little more open, a little less watched. The HOA is now being monitored by the county. New elections are scheduled, and a lot of residents who stayed quiet before are finally stepping up. As for Karen, she's no longer on the board. Her house went up for sale quietly last week. I still get a few odd looks from across the lake, but I don't mind. The truth is, this whole thing reminded me why ownership, real ownership, isn't just about property lines. It's about standing your ground when you know you're right. So yeah, Karen called 911 on me at my own lake house. But in the end, her plan didn't just backfire, expose something much bigger. And I'm still here. Lake house, keys, and all.